April 17th, 1948, 9:12 p.m. Wells Restaurant, West 126th Street, Harlem. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson sat at the center table, facing the door, when it opened without warning. 6 Italian men entered first, dark coats, heavy steps, the shape of pistols pressed clearly against wool fabric. Sal, the butcher Bonanno, followed them in, unhurried, his hands visible, his eyes already locked on Bumpy. The room went silent. Plates stopped moving. A chair scraped once against the floor and did not move again. One man stepped behind Bumpy. The barrel of a gun rested against the back of his head. Another took the left side, another the right. The remaining 3 spread across the room, blocking the exit. The distance between steel and skin was less than a palm. Bumpy did not turn around. He reached into his pocket slowly. No one spoke. No one breathed out loud. A straight razor was placed on the table. Not dropped, not slid, set down flat. The blade faced upward, the handle aligned with the edge of the wood. The razor sat exactly between Bumpy and Sal. 10 men stood in the room. 6 guns, 1 razor, 1 table. Sal Bonanno spoke in a calm voice. Harlem numbers would change hands. Harlem streets would change control, starting tomorrow night. Half of everything. Bumpy looked down at the razor for a moment. Then he raised his eyes to Sal. No threats were spoken. No guns were raised higher. No signal was given. What happened in the next 60 seconds did not end with blood on the floor. It ended with 6 Italian guns walking back out into the Harlem night, untouched, unfired, and the balance of power in Harlem shifting without a single shot being taken. To understand why that night at Wells Restaurant mattered, you have to go back to Harlem in the late 1940s, when survival depended less on law and more on who answered the door when trouble came. Harlem at that time was poor, crowded, and watched, but rarely protected. Jobs were scarce. Wages were low, rent was high. Most families lived week to week. Cash moved in small amounts, passed hand to hand, counted at kitchen tables. Banks did not lend. Police did not intervene unless they had to. When they did, it was usually too late. The numbers racket filled the gap. Pennies, nickels, dimes. People played not because they expected to win big, but because it was the only system that spoke their language. A bet placed in the morning could mean groceries at night, or nothing at all. The numbers runners knew every block, every hallway, every back stair. The bankers behind them controlled routes, payments, and discipline. Whoever controlled the numbers controlled food, medicine, and silence. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson was not a politician. He did not give speeches. He did not call himself a leader. He was a function, a fixed point in a system that had no official protection. People depended on him because he paid on time. People feared him because debts were always collected. People needed him because no one else could negotiate with both Harlem and the outside world and still walk home. He did not work alone. Big Sam stood closest. 6'4", over 260 pounds, broad shoulders, slow movements. He had been Bumpy's bodyguard for 5 years. He spoke rarely. When he did, it was usually to end a conversation. Dutch Schultz had once tried to muscle into Harlem and failed, but his shadow remained. Italian families learned from that mistake. They stopped coming loud. They came careful, quiet, organized. Sal the Butcher Bonanno was not sent by accident. He was known for cutting deals clean and enforcing them cleaner. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. When he arrived somewhere, it meant someone higher up had already decided the outcome. Behind Sal were men with no local ties. Outsiders. That mattered. Outsiders did not hesitate. They did not worry about who might see them tomorrow. They followed instructions and left. The proposal did not start at Wells Restaurant. 3 weeks earlier, a meeting took place in a private room above a bakery on the Lower East Side. 4 men attended, 1 table, no food, just coffee. $50,000 was mentioned, not as a demand, as a baseline. Harlem numbers were too profitable to ignore. Italian families had expanded everywhere else. Harlem was the last pocket not directly controlled. They believed it was only a matter of time. The plan was simple: walk in, show force, offer terms. If accepted, take half. If refused, make an example. 1 bullet was discussed. Not for Bumpy, for someone close. A message. They believed the room would collapse the moment guns were shown. They believed fear would do the work for them. What they did not factor in was time. Bumpy had heard about the meeting within days, not because someone betrayed them directly, but because money always leaves a trace. A runner talked too much. A payment came late. A name crossed the wrong mouth. Bumpy did not respond. He did not call a meeting. He did not warn anyone. Instead, he waited. Wells' restaurant was chosen for a reason. Neutral ground, public. Too many witnesses for reckless violence. Too many eyes for clean executions. The Italians believed the setting would force compliance. Bumpy believed the setting would limit options. In the days leading up to the night, small details shifted. A table moved slightly closer to the wall. A light bulb above the center table was replaced. Staff were told to leave early. Only those who needed to stay remained. Big Sam took position behind the kitchen door. Another man stood outside across the street, pretending to smoke. No guns were drawn, no signals exchanged. When the Italians walked in that night, they believed they controlled the pace. They believed surprise was on their side. They believed intimidation would finish the job before dessert was cleared. They did not know that every step they took into that room had already been measured. They did not know that the razor on the table was not a weapon meant to be used, but a line meant to be crossed or respected. They did not know that Bumpy Johnson had already decided how the night would end before the door ever opened. And when Sal Bonanno spoke his terms, he believed he was negotiating from a position of strength, unaware that strength in Harlem did not always come from the barrel of a gun, but from knowing exactly when a trigger no longer mattered. The room held steady, waiting for the moment when the plan would either succeed or fall apart. That moment was coming. 3 weeks earlier, on a cold afternoon in late March 1948, a black Cadillac stopped at the corner of Mulberry Street and Prince. The engine stayed running. The driver did not get out. 1 man stepped from the back seat and walked inside the building without looking around. The meeting room was small. No windows, 1 bare bulb, a round table with 4 chairs. 3 were already occupied. Sal the Butcher Bonanno sat with his hands folded. To his right was a man called Frankie Knives, thin, sharp nose, known for collections. Across from them sat Carlo DeLuca, numbers liaison, responsible for scouting new territories. The 4th chair waited. The door opened. Vincent Russo entered. He was there to confirm approval, nothing more. No greetings were exchanged. Carlo spoke first. Harlem numbers brought in steady money, not millions. Reliable cash, thousands each week. Enough to matter, enough to justify action. Sal listened. He did not interrupt. Carlo placed a folded paper on the table. Figures written in pencil, estimated intake, estimated loss from leaks, estimated gain under new management. $50,000 was the first number spoken out loud. It was not a demand, it was the price of entry. Vincent nodded once. Approval given. The plan was agreed in under 10 minutes. No hits planned, no war, just pressure. 6 men, guns visible, 1 meeting, terms delivered. Acceptance expected. Frankie Knives suggested a deadline. 3 weeks. Enough time to prepare. Enough time to show seriousness. If refused, escalation would follow. 1 bullet was mentioned. A symbol. Not immediate. Only if necessary. Sal ended the meeting. He would handle the delivery. Back in Harlem, the first signal arrived quietly. A runner missed a pickup. Not by accident. He was stopped and questioned by men he did not recognize. They asked about routes, about schedules, about who answered to whom. The runner said little. But fear carries information. By early April 1948, Bumpy Johnson knew outsiders were mapping Harlem again. The method was different, cleaner, organized, Italian. He did not react. He continued his routines. Morning walks, afternoon meetings, evening dinners. Always visible, always predictable. That predictability was intentional. On the 10th of April, 1948, Big Sam reported a black Cadillac parked across from Wells' restaurant for over an hour. No one entered, no one exited. The engine ran. Bumpy nodded once. Nothing else. 2 days later, a man approached one of Bumpy's bankers with an offer. Protection, stability, a bigger network, 50%, starting immediately. The banker refused. He was told to think about it. That was enough. Bumpy did not call a council. He did not warn the neighborhood. He did not move money. He did not change routes. Instead, he selected the room. Wells' restaurant was chosen because it was public but controlled. The walls were close, the exits limited. The sound carried. Violence there would echo immediately. The center table was positioned where the light hit strongest. Anyone standing would be seen clearly. Any movement would be noticed. On the afternoon of April 17, 1948, Bumpy arrived early. He sat at the center table. He ordered coffee. He waited. At 9:12 p.m., the door opened. The Italians entered exactly as planned. 6 men. Formation tight, guns visible but not drawn. Sal followed. They believed the room belonged to them the moment they stepped inside. The first move came from Sal. He spoke calmly. He laid out terms. No threats, no raised voices. That restraint was deliberate. Violence would only happen if refusal forced it. Bumpy listened. He did not interrupt. He did not respond immediately. He reached into his pocket slowly. Every gunman stiffened, fingers tightened. Breathing changed. The razor appeared. It was not a bluff. It was not theatrics. It was a message. A razor meant proximity. It meant intimacy. It meant that any violence here would not be distant or clean. Sal understood that. The razor changed the equation. Guns kill from space. Razors require closeness. Bumpy spoke 5 words. Low, even, calm. This table stays Harlem. No threat followed. No explanation. The room froze. Sal calculated quickly. Violence here would be messy. Witnesses everywhere. Retaliation inevitable. Harlem would not fall quietly. The guns did not move. Seconds passed. Sal nodded once. He stepped back. He turned toward the door. The men followed. Formation intact. No one fired. No one spoke. Outside, the night swallowed them. The confrontation ended without blood, but the decision was final. The Italians had tested the boundary. Harlem had answered. The plan they believed was perfect collapsed because it relied on fear alone, and fear did not live at that table. The street would talk by morning, and the meaning would travel faster than bullets ever could. The next phase was already beginning. 9:12 p.m. The door to Wells' restaurant closed behind the last Italian man, but the room did not move. No one rushed to speak. No one stood up. The silence stayed heavy, as if the air itself needed time to catch up. Bumpy Johnson remained seated. His hands still rested flat on the table. The razor had not moved. Big Sam stood behind the kitchen door. His shoulders stayed squared. His eyes never left the front of the room. 9:13 p.m. A man at the far table finally exhaled. The sound was loud in the quiet room. A waitress picked up a glass with shaking fingers and set it back down because her hand would not steady. Bumpy lifted the razor and slid it back into his pocket. The movement was slow, deliberate, final. He stood up. The chair legs scraped once against the floor. No one flinched this time. Bumpy walked toward the counter. Each step was measured. He did not look back. He did not check the door. He ordered another coffee. 9:14 p.m. Outside, the Italians reached the sidewalk. Streetlights cast long shadows. The black Cadillac waited at the curb, engine running. Sal Bonanno paused before getting in. He looked back at the restaurant windows. Nothing moved inside. No silhouettes rushed forward. No guns appeared. He opened the car door and sat. 9:15 p.m. The Cadillac pulled away. Tires rolled smooth, no speed, no urgency. Across the street, a man pretending to smoke watched until the car disappeared down the block. He dropped the cigarette. He stepped inside. 9:16 p.m. Word did not spread with shouting. It spread with walking. One man left the restaurant and crossed the street. Another stepped into a bar 2 doors down. A phone rang in a back room. 6 Italian guns came into Harlem and left without firing. That sentence moved faster than any detail. 9:20 p.m. In another part of Harlem, a numbers runner heard the story before he finished his route. He did not ask questions. He adjusted his path. 9:30 p.m. I'm God. A banker closed his ledger early. He did not count again. He did not double-check. He trusted the night. 10 o'clock p.m., a man associated with the Italians made a call from a payphone. He spoke quietly. He reported exactly what happened. No exaggeration. No excuses. 6 guns, 1 razor, no shots. The line went silent when he finished. 10:15 p.m. In a private apartment downtown, men who did not know Harlem personally heard the report. They did not argue it. They did not debate alternatives. They understood the message. Harlem would not be taken in a restaurant. Not like that. Midnight. Bumpy Johnson returned home. He removed his coat. He placed it carefully over a chair. He washed his hands. The razor stayed in his pocket. He slept. The night ended without sirens, without bodies, without headlines. But the shift had already occurred. The next morning, conversations changed tone. Men who had spoken carefully now spoke with certainty. Men who had hesitated now acted. Routes stabilized. Payments arrived on time. By noon, everyone who needed to know understood the same thing. Violence had been offered and refused. That refusal carried more weight than any trigger pull ever could. The confrontation did not end at the door of Wells' restaurant. It ended inside the calculations of men who understood that power had just drawn a clear boundary. The razor was never meant to cut flesh. It was meant to cut options. And in that room, at that table, under that light, every other option had disappeared. Morning came to Harlem without announcement. No sirens, no broken glass, no police tape. But something in the streets felt aligned, as if a decision had already been accepted before anyone spoke it out loud. By 8 o'clock, runners were already moving. Routes stayed the same, pickups happened on time. No one hesitated at doors. No one looked over their shoulder more than usual. That absence of panic mattered. At 9 a.m., a banker on 125th Street received his first call. The voice on the other end did not threaten. It simply asked if business would continue as before. The answer was yes. The call ended. By 10 a.m., 2 more calls came in from different parts of Harlem. Same question, same answer. By noon, the story had fully formed. 6 Italian guns walked into Wells' restaurant the night before. They left without firing. They did not come back. No one embellished it. No one needed to. The facts were enough. In the back rooms, men who usually argued numbers did not argue that day. They adjusted expectations. They closed books. They trusted continuity. Outside Harlem, the reaction was quieter. In a private office downtown, Sal Bonanno sat across from two men who outranked him. He delivered the report exactly as it happened. No excuses, no dramatics. Public place. Too many witnesses. Razor on the table. No opening. The room stayed silent when he finished. One man asked a single question. Was there hesitation? Sal answered honestly. No. That ended the discussion. By late afternoon, word reached other families. Not through gossip, through caution. Harlem was not open territory. Not without cost. Not without escalation no one wanted. An emergency meeting was discussed. It did not happen. Meetings implied problems. Problems implied loss of control. No one wanted to signal that. Instead, a decision was made without paperwork. Harlem would be left alone. That decision did not come from respect. It came from calculation. Violence there would not be clean. It would be public. It would draw attention. And it would not guarantee victory. Back in Harlem, Bumpy Johnson did not celebrate. He did not give speeches. He did not demand loyalty. He did not change his schedule. The absence of reaction was itself a signal. 5 days later, a minor dispute arose between two runners over territory. Normally, it might have escalated. That week, it did not. A quiet word was passed. The dispute ended. 2 weeks later, a man associated with outside interests was seen asking questions again. This time, he did not stay long. He left the same day. By the end of the month, Harlem numbers ran smoother than they had in years. Not because money increased, but because uncertainty disappeared. People knew who answered when things went wrong. The lesson was not spoken. It did not need to be. Power was not demonstrated through violence that night. It was demonstrated through restraint that left no room for doubt. The razor had done its job without touching skin. Years later, men would still reference that night without embellishment. Not as a story of intimidation, but as a story of limits. 5 years later, Wells' restaurant would still operate. The table would still be there. The light above it replaced again and again. 10 years later, Bumpy Johnson would face different battles. Courts, prison, politics. None of them would erase what happened in that room. Sal Bonanno would continue his work elsewhere. He would avoid Harlem entirely, not out of fear, but out of understanding. The streets remembered, not because blood was spilled, but because it was not. Power is not about